Wow. Logan, what an incredible trip that was.
One of the best Idaho trips I think we've done, and we've done some pretty incredible ones.
We've done some incredible Idaho trips. I think the Middle Fork of the Salmon is just an amazing place in general. It's the Salmon River is the longest free flowing river in the continental United States. A lot of people don't know that. It's right in the state of Idaho. I do have to preface this is that Idaho is a shitty state and nobody should move there.
Ever. Don't ever go to Idaho.
Don't go there. The only thing they do there is they grow potatoes.
That's it.
And you don't want to go there. But if we can talk about this other place that's not in Idaho for a minute.
That's not the best kept secret in the continental 48.
Yeah. So let's talk about California because this is where we were. Go to California because that's where we were.
Yeah, that's where we did all this amazing fly fishing. Yep. That's where we did this amazing woods escape, California.
California, full of just, down to earth people, rural, labor industry folks, San Francisco. That's where we went. Where we went was downtown San Francisco. If you're looking for this type of an adventure, that's where you need to go. That's where you need to move.
Yeah. Well, and we're saying this because I'm a little concerned that there might be some threats coming our way from residents of a certain state if there is too much information passed. And when I posted all my stories to Instagram, I made sure to preface everything I was posting. It's like, hey, not going to tell you where this is.
Yeah,
I don't want to delve in my toe into that pool because the people of that great state, they hold the cards pretty close to their chest.
Yeah, and I think that's the important piece, which is those people are not nice, and the terrain is stupid. So don't go there. Just don't go there. Right?
Don't go.
Yep. Don't go.
Don't go.
Now that we've got that out of the way, Logan and I went to Idaho on this fly fishing trip. For the people out there that don't know, that's where I grew up. And I grew up in Weippe and then Lewiston, which is on the confluence of two rivers, which is the Clearwater and the Snake River. Eventually flows into the Columbia and that heads on out to the ocean. Rivers are in my DNA. I start getting super, super fucking cranky every year, right around springtime.
If you don't get that river time in?
Yeah, I do. I get really cranky. I remember my wife and I, after we got married, she was, I was getting ready to go out on a trip and I was going to do like 3 or 4 back to back to back. And my wife was like, I just don't quite understand why you need to do like 3 or 4 trips right back to back to back. And this is when I was still working out there. Yeah. And I came home and my next year, she was like, it's a long time to be away. And I was like, hey, listen, if you get in the way of the river actually gets its way. if that makes sense. You get in the way of the river gets its way. And she was like, okay, got it. And we really haven't had a argument over it since. But I start getting really spicy, like right around June. If I don't hit the river and get physically immersed in the river, it's a problem. Because I did it a few years with this company, running the company, running and gunning, man, trying to, do the best that we can. Asses and elbows this entire 6 years. And I did it for a couple years where I didn't get out there. By July, I'm a flaming asshole, like just a flaming asshole. If I don't have a trip to the river scheduled, I'm a super angry guy. I'm a really angry guy. And I didn't notice it until later. And it's like, it's a release valve.
It is.
Get out there. Everything's fine. it's a chance to just go home. And I think that's the way the mountains make me feel in general, just all the way around. High mountain, craggy, cold, little frost in the morning places. They make me feel human and reconnected again. I've been accused of being kind of a hippie in some ways. And I personally think that it's like...
I think you're a third hippie. If I had to put it to numbers, I'd say you're about a third hippie.
A third hippie, yeah.
You're about a third hippie.
Yeah, I wear a pair of Birkenstocks every now and again. I listen to the Dead.
Yeah. Raise your own chickens.
I listen to the Dead. I wear some Birkenstocks, but I'm a pretty hardcore less government guy,
Yeah.
Like, give me the opportunity to sign up to kill some commies again, I would do it in a heartbeat. So it's kind of one of those things, right? It's if you like freedom, and that's the whole premise of Free Range American. If you like freedom, and if you're like us, like to do really epic shit in amazing places, man, I think you're going to find a good tribe here. I think you are.
Yeah. And this is now the third different type of trip that we've done together in Idaho. We've done the rafting down the middle fork of the Salmon. And then we did the jet boat trip with Rusty. But this was really the first time we were like, we're going here to fish.
Yeah.
Like this is primary goal for this. And kind of the whole journey along the way of, getting to our final destination was really fun to be a part of that process anyway. And if you're listening to this,
you mean the drive? The drive was fun?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was.
Right, cool.
It was for me. And I'll tell you why. But first, if you're listening to this on the podcast app, we are going to do a special video companion episode on our YouTube channel. So we got a bunch of great footage. And that was one of the big reasons, on top of needing to go get some river time in and do some fishing, was we needed to capture some visuals for Free Range American that really defined the brand and what we're trying to do with it. So if you've got a chance, shoot over to YouTube and watch this episode on YouTube. But before, you were talking about how you like to get fully entrenched in the river.
Yeah.
And that was one of the first things we did when we kind of like, when you go into Idaho from the south, like you got to enter for a while before you get to like what I really consider like mountainous, woodsy Idaho. And you blessed us with being able to witness one of your traditions that you do every year or every trip when you make it to a certain point. And would you like to tell the audience what that is and how that came to be?
Yeah, I like to baptize myself in the Idaho River as I cross. You cross the border, whichever one it is. And if I'm coming in from the east, it's typically from Missoula to Coeur d'Alene. There's some pretty epic waterways up there. If I'm coming in from the west, then it's typically going to be from the Clarkston to Lewiston side. And then, of course, there's a confluence right there. And then from the south, it's typically from Boise up through McCall. That's roughly. And I have these spots already that are pre-existing waypoints, for a lack of a better term.
Yeah.
And I get naked and I get in the river. And I've been doing it for years. So back in the day, going back and forth from either Iraq or Afghanistan, I think it started actually Iraq. It started the first combat deployment that I had was the invasion of Iraq. And I baptized myself coming back into Idaho. A lot of people are like, well, you love Idaho so much. Why don't you live there? I'm like, I tell people this all the time where I'm like, I left Idaho 20 plus years ago and I've been spending 20 plus years trying to get back there. And yeah, I've been doing this process for 20 years now. And, there are years that I don't do it. There are years I don't make it, but I'm pretty committed to it, rain or shine, regardless of the people that I have been. I've done it.
Yeah.
Yeah. My daughter thinks it's fucking crazy. Like my 6-year-old daughter is like, what are you doing? And a lot of times I'll go in and come out. Like, so as I'm leaving, I'll do the same thing. We were pressed for time. So I was just hitting it, just getting out.
Yeah. So you got your quick dip in, and then we had the pleasure of going to one of the most remarkable meat processing facility term used loosely that I can remember finding in a long time.
You don't find these anymore in America. So as you're, and I know there are a ton of them out there, right? So I know you find them, but they're so few and far between. And this place is owned by the Walters family in Riggins, Idaho. They've been friends of ours forever. And they've got a little meat store, I guess you could call it.
It's a meat store.
Meat store.
It's a nice little meat store.
Yeah. So they process wild game. They have an elk ranch out there, and you can buy buffalo or elk from them. I stop there and grab jerky every time I'm in Riggins. We bought, I think, our body weight in meat.
Yeah,
which was super fun for me because we stop there, we get loaded up with our meats. Not the first time Logan's been loaded up with meat.
Not even close.
And we grab a bunch of jerky. We talk to Kenny, this good old boy. He's probably 70 years old. He's like 7 feet tall.
Yep.
He's climbing down out of his tractor. His dog's running around, barking, and we're talking to everybody, just kind of catching up and jumping into the trucks and head north. And was I kidding? Is that like the best jerky or some of the best jerky you've ever eaten?
Yeah, it really is. And the summer sausage, like we had this habanero mango summer sausage, and
amazing.
It was a little fiery, but man,
amazing.
I could eat one of those every single day for the rest of my life.
I'm gonna look it up.
Elk brats, elk summer sausage, elk jerky, bison sausages, that elk breakfast sausage.
Amazing.
We didn't buy enough of that.
We did not. I don't know if you can have enough of that. I think I should send them my elk and have it processed there when we kill it.
Yeah.
And because you what was it? Habanero Magna? Was it? No, it's cheese habanero. They had some cheese in there, didn't they?
Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing. And the jerky, when you have so you have to go to, and the only reason I don't know this is I know the names of the family. They sell Black Rifle coffee there, but it's Mountain View Specialty Meats. You got to check them out. This isn't like a paid ad for these guys. These guys are just awesome people. Like we don't do paid ads here. So let me tell you guys about the Black Rifle Coffee subscription.
Oh, okay.
yeah. We don't do paid ads except for the company Black Rifle Coffee. Thank you, everybody. No, so we stop there. We grab some jerky. We jump in the trucks, head north to Lewiston, where I grew up. And we were doing a retirement for one of my friends, our friends, actually. He trained both of our dogs.
Trained both of our bird dogs. Yep. Incredible human. 37 years, right?
37 years.
37 years in law enforcement. Finished with the Idaho State Police.
Yep.
And a phenomenal human. And that was just, we go to a retirement party. Obviously, there was a ton of law enforcement there. And, it was really interesting to get those guys' take on everything that is going on right now. Because we really haven't had a chance to just sit down with a bunch of police and just kind of talk through stuff. And, it was really interesting to hear their take and hear some of the stories that came about as a result of, what's been going on. And it was a new, fresh perspective that, I was happy to hear from those guys who have, busted their ass for for 20 years up in Idaho.
Yeah, for a long time, I've had that conversation, not to launch into some weird, semi-political conversation, but for a long time, I've been having this conversation. I remember I was actually fly fishing with a group of friends up in the North Fork, and one of my friends' wives said something about, cops, they don't even have college educations. I was like, oh, my good friend went to West Point. I don't know, what college did you go to? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And people just, I don't even know if they have police don't have proper representation, I think, at times, because when you do run into a police officer, typically it's because you've broken a law, right? And I've thought about that a lot because I have had friends both in fire department, law enforcement, both. And firefighters are always showing up to save you, right? So they have a great image. But a police officer pulls you over because you're doing 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 20 miles an hour over, or you've done something else. You've been belligerent in a bar, especially you. Something like that. So they don't have a direct and positive representation for every one of their interactions. Most of the time it's negative. And I think that's misrepresentative of the actual human beings behind the badge. Right. And I know it is, right? Because it's not, they're not all dickheads.
No,
Ed was telling me he said something like he hadn't written a ticket his entire career at Idaho State Police. He's like, I'm a failure.
Yeah, but through the course of his career, he did have to, make entry on a building that was being occupied by someone who was, actively shooting at police. So it's not like just because it's Idaho State, like it's not boring, and there's not easy decisions for those guys either.
No, I mean, and even the law enforcement or the wildlife law enforcement that they do investigations out in the national forests. Out of all the years I've been fishing and hunting in the backcountry, I can't think of one negative interaction I've had with a law enforcement, like a fishing game person, or with what they used to call them, pine cops, the Forest Service 1811s, which are the special agents. And I most of the time when you find like they're checking your IDs and stuff like that and making sure that you have a fishing license, like I don't fish without a license. I don't hunt without a license. I always carry my license typically with me, and if not, it's in the truck. I've never had one negative interaction, even when I've not had it on me, and you're supposed to have it on you at all times, right? Like typically it's like, oh, is it in your truck? Yeah. Half the time I've been stopped by fishing game, not stopped, but they'll come down and talk to you while you're fishing, and they'll just shoot the shit with you. I've been on the Middle Fork and they'll just shoot the shit with you. They don't even ask if you have your fishing license. They just like shoot the shit. Caught any fish? You guys have a license? Yeah. Okay, great. See you later. That they're probably not supposed to do that. They're probably supposed to ask, right? Every time they interact.
Yeah.
But out of all the engagement, I was reading a statistic the other night. It was like 20+ million distress calls. 20+
in the US
million, responses throughout the year. And that many interactions, and that's
it's almost
distress calls, or
it's almost 10% of the country that's coming in call volume in a year.
So anyway, we're not, a lack of going down a rabbit hole against this, but it's we had a great time. It's great to see everybody. Great to see Ed, great to see Kay, his wife, and their family, and just show up, up and say hi.
Yeah.
Ran into some guys on the golf course. from Federal Ammunition, and Black Rifle Coffee serves coffee in the Federal Ammunition factories, which
is in Lewiston.
Yeah,
Idaho.
The CCI Spear. And it's funny because I just like came walking up to their table and they, hey, what's up, fellas? What are you guys doing? And I hadn't seen them since we did the 75th Federal anniversary there in Lewiston last year. But that was a huge win for us. Like, it made me feel really good when we can supply coffee to people that are making, ammunition. One, it powers our recreation. So fantastic for us, right? It's like, man, we get a great relationship with Federal Ammunition. The factories are my hometown. Win all the way around. We call them. We're like, hey, can we get an extra, few couple rounds here? And then pretty soon we hear the dump truck pulling up and, beep, beep. Oh, great. Okay. So we definitely, it doesn't go underappreciated. It's a great relationship to have with those guys. And we know we're very privileged, by the way, to have that relationship. It doesn't go, unrecognized, the fact that we're in a very unique position to have this great relationship where, we get to supply them coffee and they give us a few rounds a year.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's cool establishing a relationship with a company who's, in your hometown,
Yeah.
So that's the way it should be.
That's the way it should be. And they're all good people all the way around. We went out to their factory, the main factory. We've been to Lewiston multiple times. They employ several thousand people, and, give people great jobs. This isn't a paid advertisement for Federal, but it's a great company. It really is. And it's been really good being able to get to know those guys and, build a relationship with them. And if you're part of the coffee club too, you also get a discount through Federal. So that's just my 2 cents, which is, if you're not part of the coffee club, you should join because you get a bunch of discounts with other companies. And when I started the coffee club, the intention was to have your coffee pay for your recreation or your passions. I kind of wanted both things, which is, I was shooting a lot then. I was like, that would be cool if we could get discounts on ammo by just joining a coffee club.
Yeah.
Well, did it. So if you shoot a lot, join the coffee club, get a discount through Federal Ammunition. Fantastic, right? Awesome deal.
So after we did a brief stint in Lewiston there, we continued to head north, and we get more and more remote. The towns get a little bit smaller and smaller, and there's a cool little coffee shop, Caliber Coffee, up in what town is that?
Orofino. Yeah.
And it was good to be able to touch base with those guys. And it was interesting because we stopped into that kind of the off-road dealership there, and we were looking for some stuff before we were out of cell service and away from everything for a while. And one of the guys we walked past had an old handmade Black Rifle coffee mug, and we got starting to chat with him. He's like, business has been booming. Like, the economy has been good for these people in rural Idaho, because throughout this time, so many people have picked up, gotten an RV, either bought one or are renting one. And so the local economy is doing well there. And then everybody's buying off-road vehicles, side-by-sides, dirt bikes. Like, he was like, we can't keep anything in stock right now. Like, this has been one of our busiest times we've ever had, just because so many people are looking to escape from, this lockdown right now.
Yeah. And what a great thing to do. You and I being able to jump up there and do that, being able to do that type of recreation, whether it's in Texas or anywhere from Texas all the way up. The people that are thinking about doing some type of recreation and getting out, getting away from people, man, do it. Like stop making the excuses. Stop, telling yourself you can't do it. Just throw your shit in the back of your car, your truck, or whatever it is. And, I've loaded my kids up and, just kind of said, screw it, let's get up there and we'll figure it out, right? So did I nail the packing list? No, but you kind of got to get your reps in and eventually you'll figure it out. But what a great place to get outside. And really there was not a lot of people. I thought there would be more people. There really wasn't a lot of people. So super impressed with, one, business was booming all the way around, which I thought, I was really hoping that it would be. Ammo manufacturers can't keep up with their ammo.
Surprise, surprise.
Right? Surprise, surprise. And the recreation industry is booming. Now, outside of that, I'm not exactly sure, but I know that there's a lot of people that are breathing a big sigh of relief, being able to pay their mortgages because of what's happening right now with, isolation. And the other thing that I was surprised was they were talking about the real estate market was just on fire from all those, rural properties are being sold, which I think is really interesting because I didn't expect that. I thought, with a dip in the economy, people would be keeping their cash, maintaining their savings, keeping their cash. But it looks like a lot of people have been, because of this, which, I'd thought about it a little bit and it makes sense, which is they're saying, screw the city. I've got to get somewhere a little bit more remote, have a little bit more distance from people. And, now with this whole thing being a complete fucking train wreck, now's my excuse to make it happen.
All it is, eliminating some of the statistical probabilities of threat.
Yeah.
Yep. You got less things to worry about when there's less human elements involved in it, right?
Well, yeah. And it's talking to, like, we stopped at a couple pharmacies because I needed nicotine gum. And they were talking about how they haven't even seen one COVID case in some of these entire counties. These counties encompass a bunch of small towns. They haven't seen one COVID case.
Yeah, I remember the Caliber Coffee employees bringing that up too. Like, they had kind of heard of one, or there was like a test done, but largely COVID has not impacted those more rural areas.
Yeah, and thank God. I mean, I know that it's been hit. Like a lot of the Native American reservations have been hit really hard, and I know that some of the rural communities have, but where we were hasn't been hit. Neither you or I are showing any signs or symptoms because we obviously wouldn't have went up there if we did. But we don't really need, you and I don't really need an excuse to get out and make content in the outdoors, or I think we're always kind of looking for some excuses to get out there and do it.
Yeah.
But once we got up there, and we hit it hard. We hit it hard for a couple of days.
We did. Delve into kind of your history a little bit, but both you and like your overall family's history, because your side of the family, they go back generations into this one area of the state.
Yeah. So, where I grew up, there was, and that was in Clearwater County in, the Panhandle section of Idaho, and a really small logging town. So both family, my mother's side and on my father's side, they were both logging families. My mother's side was more pervasive, aunts and uncles, and everybody kind of lived around there. My father's side was just essentially my grandparents and his family members, meaning his brothers and sisters. But everybody grew up logging, everybody grew up hunting, everybody grew up fishing. My grandfathers both worked on that river, so I've heard stories about this river, the North Fork, since I was a kid. My uncle, my great uncle, was probably one of the most prolific cougar hunters, hound hunters in the country at one point. Up till 80 plus years old, the guy was hunting cougars with hounds. He'd had multiple strokes. He could barely talk, and he was still running dogs up in the mountains. Scared the shit out of me when I was driving with him in his truck. And, my dad, I remember being out there with him in his logging truck, going out to a lot of the different job sites, essentially, logging operations. So just corkscrewing around in the mud, in your logging truck, those are the things that stick with you. Those are memories because it's like the snow and the mud and, the pitched cliffs. I used to always remember that. His truck was just like looking over the edge of the window and just straight down a mountain and just like, fuck. And I just remember so well, like when he was sliding around and just really trying to get a big load of logs out of the mountains in the mud with like hooking chains on and grinding his way around on these fucking cliffs. And, as a kid, that stuff stays with you, right? It stays with you and you just don't forget it. And then we would hunt up there too. So we would hunt same kind of area. So we'd elk hunt, deer hunt. And then we would fish. My grandfather loved to fish, and I would spend at least a couple weeks every summer with him on the North Fork of the Clearwater, just beating around in his little camper, going from fishing hole to fishing hole, and he taught me how to fish. We used to fish with casting bubbles and flies, mainly lures every now and again. And, the other things that I remember is going to black powder rendezvous and, growing up shooting black powder and dressing up in like capotes, going to these like really cool places for kids because you're throwing like tomahawks and knives and building fires and going out on what's called trail walks where you're shooting these different targets out in the middle
it's just
of
a
the
whole
woods.
bunch of man shit.
Yeah, it's super fun, man.
Each other, yeah.
I mean, you couldn't ask for a better time as a kid.
Yeah.
Because you were free just to run. You couldn't really get in trouble. So you got a gun and a hatchet and a knife and like your foot and steel. And you're going around to all these different areas, like not setting fires, but starting fires. My cousin Danny and I, who's 6 months younger, who ended up going off and, getting his PhD later in life. But he and I were so competitive towards each other, and we were always competing against each other, and the tomahawk and knife throws and the fire starting. And I had this 32 caliber muzzleloader it was one of my first rifles. I had a 22 Magnum lever action. That was my very first rifle that my dad got me. And then I had a black powder rifle that everything. So my grandfather made me a powder horn. My uncle had made me like, straps, and it like carved in like, elk carvings and stuff into them. And that was just where we lived, and that was our life.
Yeah.
Right. Like around the woods, and like I grew up there, and that's how we recreated. That's all I know as far as like recreation wise. That's what I know as far as recreation.
Yeah. Remember when we left Orofino, like it felt like there's a departure line. Like when you get out of Orofino, it's like, no, you don't have any more cell coverage for a very long time. And then it's like from that point on, you feel like you're in a mountain almost. Like there's almost like this abrupt change in scenery where you're just going up and up and up. The trees are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And you really get this sense of like, I'm going to an old place.
Right.
Like I'm going to a historic place. And you get, as you travel through and you get deeper and deeper and deeper into the Idaho wilderness, I couldn't wait to get out of the truck and just get a line in the water, and like that, having that childhood anticipation again, it's like, you don't get that all the time.
No. Mm-mm.
And it is something as simple as fishing. Like we're grown men tying little flies on line, and I was thinking about it because Heather just went and did this noodling trip, she pulled out these huge catfish, and I was like, here's my little cutty. But it's like, I don't care. Like the whole process of going through and like getting in the river, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like you set foot in this thing. So it's like you feel so much a part of the place that you're in when you're up there. Like that trip really to me is like a good definition of what I think free range American is like, it's not called office American.
Right.
It's free range American. And this trip in particular is like, man, that was gold for why we're doing all this stuff, is to have experiences like that.
Yeah, I agree. I think to inspire the American dream through hard work and adventure, right? So adventure is hard work.
Yeah.
You got to put in the work. You have to develop skill sets. You have to plan, you have to coordinate, and you have to execute, right? It's the same thing, but then you have to curate these skills over a lifetime. And I think there's something to be said for that, which is, I don't expect to be the best fly fisherman that's ever lived like next week, right? It's just not going to work, because it's something that I expect to be fly fishing up until this year, if not month, that I die. I'm hoping that I'm able to fly fish, right? But I'm also a fisherman, which is, I take a spinning rod, I take a fly rod. I'm there to catch fish.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And there's a lot of guys that they like to eliminate an entire half of their ability to they're like, I like to spin fish, or, I like to,
I only drive a Ford.
Yeah.
Or I only fly fish. It's like, what?
Yeah.
Why do we got to pick sides here?
Yeah. A lot of places I've been, you should be carrying both rods.
Yeah.
Right. Depending on the hatch, depending on what you're going to be after, you might want to, because you're casting, right? If you can't back cast in a certain area, you're not going to fly fish it. You're just not going to fly fish it. If you are, it's going to be a roll cast, and you're only going to get out so much line. Whereas if you have something you can cast across on a really short back cast, you're in business, right?
Yeah.
And you and I both wanted to go to a river that we could eat what we caught, or at least a couple of them have the opportunity to do that. So, you got to load up and prepare your tools. And it looks a little bit ridiculous, I would imagine, from a lot of people who are like, man, this is like a huge investment. You guys are spending gas and fly rods and line, all this other stuff. I'm like, yeah, but it gives you something to do in the water, and it makes you think a little bit differently.
Well, it does. And I really don't think it's that big of an investment, because like, I'm like the bare bones guy. Like I don't have a ton of gear when it comes to fly fishing.
No, you didn't even have any waders.
Yeah. I'm out there. I don't have any waders. I'm using my binos case to hold all my flies. I'm in shorts. I'm in old gym shoes. And outside of that, we stayed in a fifth wheel, but like everybody's got a tent.
Yeah.
My fly rod is you can get the same rod at Walmart.
Yeah.
It's not a $400 rod.
No.
And so it's really not that difficult to repurpose some of your existing gear, play with it a little bit, see what you really need, bear the cold a little bit.
Yeah.
And then start to figure out, like, I'm so glad I didn't just go to REI or Cabela's or Bass Pro and just, spend the bank and get a bunch of gear for this trip. Cause I was like, I want to test what I have first, and then like go back and develop it. And, so you're rocking waders, you've got the nice chest rig, fly case. So it really doesn't take that much. You can get out there for a couple $100, really.
You can get out there for a couple $100. And for the longest time, I only used a tarp. I would just set up a tarp, and I fished that river a lot on a fly rod that I built when I was like 12 or 13. I built my first fly rod when I was like, whatever age it was, as a 4-piece, like Gen 2 graphite. It's called an Elkhorn. I remember that the company, and I built the rod. So it's really not hard. It just takes you could probably do it with a YouTube video and a kit, and for less than $50.
Right.
And when I first started going out there by myself, I had this beat up piece of shit Jeep Cherokee and an old blue tarp and, a thermarest that I would throw in the back of it and then fish with a rod that I built because I didn't have any money in high school or college. It's not like I could afford anything. And I had the same time, right? I have the same memories, the same fond memories. I don't think back of those times and go, man, if I would have only had, that sweet $500 tent, it would have made my memory so much better. Right. No, I remember getting soaked to the fucking bone, trying to figure out how to, make a fire and not packing right. Like that's all part of the process. Like that's all part of the process. Like getting your reps in and just eliminating the excuses for yourself not to do it. Like, what are the excuses? You don't really have a lot of excuses. If you have the time and a little bit, when I say even a little bit, we were talking about fishing line on a Nalgene bottle with lures the other day, and how you can make an impromptu rod out of that, out of nothing, basically go out and catch fish and have a good time. And I guarantee if you have kids, they're not going to know the difference either way. Like, shit, I didn't know that we were.
And who cares? Like when we were down in Guatemala touring coffee farms, we saw a guy out in a little shiesty kayak doing the same thing.
Same shit.
Because it's so much easier to not have to transport a rod when you're, in some remote or you don't got the money or whatever it is. All you need is some line and a bottle. I've seen people do it on 20-ounce pop bottles before too,
Yeah. I think people get so fixated on the gear, and that's good in the sense of marketing is doing their job for a lot of these companies because they've convinced people that they're going to have a better time if they have like better gear. Yes and no, right? And there's a saying that says there's no bad weather, just bad gear. And that is true, right? When I've been on sections of the river and the mountains, especially the middle fork of the Salmon, when it's really, really cold and you don't have a dry suit and you're getting dunked a few times, like your life gets really fucking miserable really fast, and you're just jackhammering all day long. You're miserable, right? And then came out of that trip, made the investment in a dry suit, came right back out, same weather, maybe worse, and I'm happy as shit.
Yeah.
Just snug as a bug, happy as shit, could care less. But great, it could start snowing right now and I really wouldn't care, right? So there is that element or that component to saying there's, no bad weather, just bad gear, and good gear will make your great experience even better, depending, right?
Yeah.
But we didn't encounter weather out there where our gear would have made a make or break circumstance in our experience. We wouldn't have needed, super expensive Gore-Tex. I could have been waiting in my shorts just like you, and I would have had the same time, right? I just would have been a little bit colder. And you might even look back on that differently and say, wow, that was cool. That was fun, because I've done that a lot where gone out, not had waders, not had the gear for whatever reason. Last time I was out there, I did it. And I ended up spending the majority of my time with, my wife just kind of like flipping rocks and looking at bugs, and because the fishing was off, it wasn't really, we weren't catching shit. So I was just playing in the river. People are probably listen to that and say, what the fuck? You're playing in the river? Yeah, man. I just like go and check stuff out. Like go and like, jump in and float down a little fluffy section of rapids, flip over rocks and check out bugs and, go for a run up the trail and like just kind of be a kid again.
Yeah.
And I didn't hardly fish the last time I was up there, and I still had an epic time. Like you said, it's more about being out there, being in the river, being involved in this than catching huge fish. I remember only a couple of circumstances where I'm like, I caught this huge fish and I remember the fish, but I don't remember that making or breaking the experience that I had out there.
Yeah. So, obviously you've been fly fishing for a majority of your life.
Yeah.
I think I initially started picking it up in my later teenage years, but growing up in Michigan, most of my fishing experience was bass, walleye, ice fishing, a little bit of fly fishing in the northern part of Michigan, during the steelhead season. But learning and mastering fly fishing is a really interesting discipline. I will kind of compare it to archery in a sense, because of the fact that you have to have a good understanding about what you're doing with your body and how your body is communicating through to the activity that you're trying to do. Mm-hmm. And so how long did it take you in that progression before you were like, I feel like I got a decent mastery of the technique involved with fly fishing?
I don't necessarily even think that I feel that way now. When we were out there, I was trying to work on a double hole, which is a double hole cast it's a different type of cast. It allows you to put out a little bit more line. And I was trying to work on it, and I've worked on it in the past, and I've had it and kind of lost it. And it's a timing thing. It's like a timing and weight issue.
Yeah.
And the other piece to that is, just casting line is just one aspect of fly fishing, right? It's just being able to get the line out there is one piece, but it's how you land your line on the water, right? How you're landing the fly, how much, what type of setup are you running? Are you running a dry fire? Are you running a nymph? Are you running, hopper dropper? Like what kind of scenario, what kind of flies are you running? So can you get the line out there is one piece. Then can you land the fly where you want to land it is another piece. Yep. Then can you get the line out there, land your fly where you want to land it, and in the way you want the fly to present itself. So it's, landing the line before, so it lays on the water, and then it kind of just drops that fly, just kind of like gently drops that fly, presents it just really delicately on top of the water versus like slapping it. Yep. And I messed that up on a regular out there, like on a last trip.
It's tricky.
It's a tricky time.
You got to be delicate. It's a very delicate activity. And I remember I developed a little hack for that because I'm still not that good at it. When we were on the last rafting trip, is if you've got it, you can just throw it up against a rock, let it hit the rock, drop in nice and soft.
Yeah, okay.
Nice and soft.
Right.
Had a decent amount of success that way.
Yeah, a little pillow landing, if you will.
A little bank shot.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. I've done the bank shot. I think the game that I like to play the most is how do I land the fly, and if I can land the fly exactly where I want to land it and the way that I want to land it. So I'm less concerned now with the line. I'm more concerned now with how is the fly being presented to the fish. And this is probably boring as shit for most people because they're probably like, what the fuck are you guys talking about? But, I like the fact that this is just it's a very unique skill that requires a lifetime of learning in order to be, you can continue to develop this skill forever. And it's just, you can never really be a master. I suppose, there are plenty of guys that would say that they're masters, but by the time that you start looking at not only the casting of fly fishing, the types of flies that you're utilizing, the types of water, because then you go into different types of water, different types of hatches, how is it being presented? I learned something not too long ago, and I was utilizing it up there, which is fish really like to be in current-based water because their bodies get more fatigued if they have less current. And so there's this idea that fish just kind of loiter in like the chill water, and that's not true.
Yeah.
A certain type of fish does, but not the fish that I was hunting, right? Yeah. Not the one that I wanted.
Which we found success on right out of the gate.
Yeah.
Because, you've got and a lot of the water was high, on the way up there, we're going through, class 5 stuff. We're like, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And the river we were on wasn't that intense, but there are still parts where it's kicking pretty good. And getting that space between, not still water, but distiller water, and not the rushing rapids, but there's like that little zone,
seam. Yeah.
That little seam right in between. And had, I think one of your first casts was successful as soon as we got in that first day.
I know. It was wild. I was like, wow, okay, we're gonna do this now. Okay.
Yeah.
Very rarely does it happen like that, right? You're gonna spend some time, and shoot, we had that first night. We started hooking into fish really early, and right off the bat, like it was just, I think my second or third fish in was probably a 16, 18 inch cutthroat, big, beautiful cutthroat, like, big red gills, and it was green, and it was just so colorful and so cool. And that's so much fun when you hook into that fish. You're like, oh man, because it's an older fish.
Yeah.
And it's just incredibly beautiful. And that's one of the things I really just, I love pulling up these fish, taking a look at them, looking at their colors, seeing, just being able to pull something out of the water that you can't see. Most of the time you can't see them, especially in the current. And then saying, wow, this thing's just fucking hanging out in there. Like this thing's just hanging out in this river. And I just pulled it out, took a look at it, snapped a photo, and then, obviously punched it loose. But we also had the opportunity to eat some while we were up there too. And how good was that?
Oh, it did it super simple too. We had 3 cutthroats.
Yep.
What'd you do? You just did salt, pepper, didn't deskin.
Yeah, we had rainbows. I think those are rainbows. And when I say I think, those are rainbow trout. And I just gutted them, and salt and pepper, butter in the pan, and that's it. Like that is it.
Yep. Cast iron classic.
Yeah, cast iron on the fire. It's so good for a fresh trout. Some of the best trout I've had is I'll go up and I'll catch them, and I'll just gut them right there, and I'm throwing them straight into the pan. Like they aren't 5 minutes out of that water before they're in a pan and they're being eaten. And I've done it in my titanium cook set. I cooked this fish a couple years ago where it's like this giant titanium cup, and I'm like rotating this fish around by its tail and a pair of pliers, try to get it all cooked up. And that was a few years ago with my wife. My wife was like, man, you really want to eat that fish. I was like, it's amazing. I remember my grandpa used to eat these things all the time, and he would be cooking them up. And one of the things he used to do was he used to drink Ham's beer.
Oh yeah.
That shit?
Oh yeah. Very Ham's familiar with Ham's.
But he used to put salt in his beer. And it's one of those things that I always remember when I'm fly fishing or fishing and I'm cooking fish, is my grandpa used to put salt in his Ham's beer and drink, a beer and have a fresh cooked trout. He used to bread them. I don't bread them, but I just like eating the skin the way that it comes off, like really crispy and crunchy. It's incredible.
So good. So good. One of the things that I really have started to fall in love with in Idaho specifically is just breeding the water.
Right.
From a perspective of oaring a raft or driving a jet boat or reading a river from a fishing perspective. Like, it is so much fun to me to start studying water flow.
Yeah.
And develop this skill set to where not only navigate it, but be able to do that in multiple different vehicles.
Right.
And then also, just within that, develop this keen sense about where the fish are.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the best things that I did early on in my teens was I started whitewater kayaking back in the day. And what I really liked about whitewater kayaking is I was closer to the water. And when you're closer to the water, you start paying way more attention to all the individual aspects of it. Mm-hmm. So your eddy lines, your rapids, the types of rapids, and versus in a jet boat, you can just kind of plow through a lot, right? You still have to read the water because you can't get into too shallow of water because you don't want to, hit a rock. You're looking for rocks. And in a kayak, you're looking for rocks, but you're also looking to rocks because you want to play in and around them, right? You want to catch a surf wave, or, you're looking for your right lines to not just get fucking pummeled depending on where it is. But every modality, I think, possible to go up or down rivers, I've just about done them all. And kayaking is probably one of my favorite things, to just get really close, really intimate with the water. Running jet boats is super, super fun. It's a power. It's just about, power and finesse, right? Rafts are really cool, and I like rafts for like long haul adventures. But they're pretty forgiving. You can kind of bump them off rocks, and, they're big, and, they're fun, but they're less intimate because you're higher off the water. Yeah. Your lines don't have to be as tight, versus in a kayak, you're in the water all day long. Like, you're immersed in it. You're wet, you're rolling, and you're just completely involved in the river all day long. And kayaking is one of those things that's such an adrenaline-based sport, depending on the river that you're in, that you never really get bored either. Yeah. You're never going down going, man, this is boring, right? Unless you're in a boring section of the river, and then you're just, plowing through it. Drift boats are, those are super fun because, you can cut through the water really well. They kind of, you're rowing a lot like a raft, but you can drive them a little bit better, easier, I should say. And, if you're in like a ducky or something like that, then you kind of have the best of both worlds, because then, you're not in a hard boat that can roll and a bunch of other things.
Or inflatable kayak. And
that's what I meant.
What's that other inflatable kayak that we have? The
alpaca.
The alpaca.
Yeah, that's a lightweight kind of expedition style. Yeah. Alpaca. And that thing's just cool, man. Like, it weighs 8 pounds. You can throw it in a backpack. You can get down a river in it. You can really fucking drive that boat. You can. I've put it on some big water. I mean, I ran it several days in the Middle Fork, and the guys on the Middle Fork have run those in big water, like June water. Yeah. Surprisingly stable. So those were the things where I was like, a lightweight boat, and there's a few companies that make them out there. They're super expensive, depending, because they're really lightweight. But I've seen guys load up like their, deer and
there's if moose. You know what you're doing in a kayak, they can be incredible stable. The first time that I got in one of those on the Middle Fork, I think I was swimming, the first 3 times that I hit a hole. But after you get the buoyancy of it and the balance to it, like, and you figure out that you need to, for lack of a better, you need to attack.
Yeah.
You need to attack.
Right.
You got to get in there and get aggressive with it. And that's really how you push through a lot of these rapids.
Yeah. You can punch through a lot of shit just by being really aggressive. And you can also take the other route, just being, not passive, but being, aggressive in the sense of just making sure that you understand how to read the water and where the boat's going to go and how the back and the front is going to react with one another. I've done a few trips, actually up there, where you load up your shit inside. So you got your 4-piece rod and a bunch of other stuff in there, and, self-supported kayaking trips where you can get out and kayak. I'm less inclined in those because it's hard to get out and start fishing.
Yeah.
I think the next trip that we do, will be a really adventurous section of river. But we got to get our shit in one sock in order to get that one done, because it's out there. It's out there a ways.
Yeah. Well, again.
Yeah, we're at an hour already.
We are.
This sounds more like an NPR podcast where we're just talking about fly fishing.
Well, we're trying to figure out the best time to do these FRAs, and it's early afternoon right now, and Evan's usually pretty spicy in the morning, so we're trying to get him early. The 5 o'clock ones never seem to go very well.
Oh, I'm not even worn down. I don't think it's not that at all. I think after I've had my first couple cups of coffee, ooh, man, I am on fire. You know what I mean? I'm on fire. But fly fishing calms me down too. So I think that's just having it playing in the background like that. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah. You just feel relaxed.
You feel a little relaxed.
You can hear the water in your head.
Yeah, you can.
Know?
Yeah. I think it's just kind of zen me out a little bit.
Well, yeah, it has just how well do you sleep next to the river?
Oh, I sleep incredibly well.
I'm a little baby on riverbank.
And especially when you're all snuggled up, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah. Probably my favorite piece of kit that we picked up was that 2-person sleeping bag.
Yeah. That is a great investment, because you don't ever get cold.
Handy.
You just don't get cold.
You don't.
And I like the fact and cherish the fact that you're a naked sleeper. You know? Yeah.
That's how it helps you stay warm.
All right. Free range American fly fishing. Thanks a lot, guys.